listen, we want to talk about this tax bill. We know in the upcoming week the Senate's going to get down and dirty. Do you think that this bill, when you all go to conference and you compare the House bill and the Senate bill, is it going to look much different? Tell us where you are, Mr. Chairman. I know that there are things you're talking about, the state and local tax deduction. You're talking about what Ron Johnson has a problem with, the difference between the corporate rate and the pass-through rate. Give us your status check.
So, one, I'm really encouraged by how pro-growth both of these tax reform plans are. And again, both of us are driving toward the agreement that we reached with President Trump earlier this year. I think there are some differences that we'll want to reconcile on the individual rates. The Senate has 7 brackets. We have 4. How we address our small businesses in a major way, we'll want to do the best we can there as well. And then, of course, how we design or redesign, I would say, our international tax code so our companies can compete and win anywhere in the world, including here at home. Those are 3 areas I know we're going to want to spend some time to find some common ground.
Yeah, but what are you going to do with the fact that 6 million Californians use the state and local tax deduction? New York as well, feeling like they pay into the federal government a lot more than they get back. When the final bill is all said and done, ready for a broad vote, you're not going to get those people on board who say their constituents are seeing higher taxes, like a Peter King, who we're going to speak with momentarily, as well as others in California, Illinois. Is there room for movement on that state and local tax deduction, sir?
So at the end of the day, I think we're going to be able to prove that we can provide tax relief for all Americans regardless of where they live. And so we have been working very carefully with our high-tax state lawmakers. I know, too, those high-tax states are already rethinking how hard they tax their citizens because Congress is actually, for the first time, saying, look, why don't we, rather than have high tax rates and everyone just subsidize and pay each other's taxes, why don't we lower the tax rates for everybody and you just pay your own? It is a new way of thinking, but we are working with our high-tax state lawmakers to make sure there's real relief. And at the end of the day, I think the House bill did a very good job of addressing this issue. I think we can do better, and we've pledged to work with our high-tax state lawmakers to do exactly that.
And so what you're saying is there is potential that you will make changes to meet the president's deadline. Obviously, his priority is getting this done this year. Here's what he told me just a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Chairman. Watch this. Tell us where we stand on the tax plan right now.
You know, there's a great spirit for it. People want to see it, and I call it tax cuts. It is tax reform also, but I call it tax cuts. It'll be the biggest cuts ever in the history of this country. And I think that there's tremendous appetite, there's tremendous spirit for it, not only by the people we're dealing with in Congress, but for the people out there that want to see something.
And yet, he wants that on his desk by the end of the year. You think you can do that, even though senators like Ron Johnson have an issue? He wants change in terms of the corporate rates, the business rates.
Yeah, so Maria, I believe we can. I predict we will have a new tax code for the new year and for a new era of American prosperity. We deserve it. Americans deserve a new tax code. And I'll tell you, whether you're in New York or California, Illinois, we're continuing to see our jobs in our plants and our research march overseas. It's time to end that. And I think any senator, any member of Congress who defends the status quo, look, I think Americans are hungry for a new code. Let
me ask you this, Mr. Chairman. The president and you as well keep saying that this is really for the middle class. The tax cuts are going to impact the middle class and they're going to put more money in their pockets. We get that. But at the same time, we had an economist on my morning program this past week, Stephanie Pomboy from Macro Mavens, and she says, look, the top 20% in terms of earners spend more than the bottom 60%. They're the ones spending the money, and they're not really getting the relief because you've got the top end, in some cases, seeing their taxes go higher because of this elimination of the deduction. Here's Stephanie Pomboy. I got to get your reaction. Mr. Chairman, listen.
What's concerned me is that all of the focus has been on the corporate side, which is great. Again, you know, we do need to reform the corporate tax code. It doesn't do enough for consumers, especially at the high end. I mean, I hate to say this, and we've talked about it before, but the top 20% do 60%. They spend more than the bottom 60% of consumers.
What about that, Mr. Chairman? Are you cutting taxes on people who don't pay taxes and raising taxes on the people who pay taxes?
The answer is no. We provide tax relief at every level. I know the House tax reform plan that we passed is 70% of the tax relief goes to those families making less than $200,000, sort of that range of middle class from the low tax to the high tax states that we all worry about. So we deliver in a good sense there. But we deliver tax relief at every level, and you have to look underneath that rate itself, because we're continuing the mortgage deduction, charitable deduction, the property tax deduction. We eliminate the AMT. We eliminate a number of those provisions that actually did impact and raise taxes on our more successful Americans. Because we make those changes underneath the rate, you have to look more carefully than you did in the past. So at the end of the day, I think everyone's going to keep more of what they earn.
Yeah, and I totally believe that moving the corporate tax rate the way you are hoping to will actually have broad impact and move the needle on economic growth. But let me ask you, got to get to the spending side of this, Mr. Chairman, because you guys just passed a budget, really narrow margin, $47 trillion budget, and yet not a lot of spending cuts, sir. People are wondering when, in fact, the $20 trillion in debt that we talk about so much becomes a priority. When will that be, sir?
Yeah, I think it is in this tax reform plan. Here's why. Look, every business that gets itself in trouble has to do two things. It has to cut its spending, and it has to increase its revenue. Tax reform is all about increasing that revenue. I also will tell you that, just taking a step back to a comment you made, when you look at our high tax states, many of them are also economic engines of the U.S. economy. So when you lower those rates so our businesses, whether they're Main Street businesses or they're competing around the world, can compete and win and reinvest those dollars back in the United States, all of which they can't do today, you're going to see growth in state and local revenues. You're going to see it in individuals and families' pocketbooks. You're going to see it in higher paychecks along those Main Street businesses. So look, there is a lot from an economic growth standpoint that this tax code really drives.
Yeah, look, you had $1.5 trillion to work with. That was what it was agreed upon for your tax cuts. $900 billion of that are the business cuts. And I believe that, because I do believe in the fact that when you create an environment for business that's more attractive, they will, in fact, turn around and invest and hire more workers. I get that. But at the same time, when you're looking at this tax plan, people want change. But you do seem to have Lisa Murkowski now in the Senate on the plan. She is agreeing to eliminate that individual mandate. Do you think that makes it in the final bill?
Well, look, we'll see. We're anxious for the Senate to deliver on tax reform, how they do it, the design that they bring to the table. Look, we're just urging them and encouraging them on. The House, as you know, has passed the repeal of the mandate repeatedly, so there's strong support over here in the House for it. And look, there's a case to be made. This is all about eliminating taxes on low and middle income families. The individual mandate does hurt many of those families who can't afford, don't want Obamacare. So we're just encouraged the Senate's acting. We hope they deliver this week, and really anxious to get to a conference and find that common ground.
Yeah, it's going to be a big victory for you once you do pass this. Is the next priority infrastructure or welfare or what? What's the next priority when you look into 2018 once this goes through?
Yeah, I think both of those, Maria. Infrastructure is a key part of our economy. We know more needs to be done, but we need more workers, qualified workers. Yeah. We think a lot of them are trapped in the government today, so we're anxious to help them get to that good-paying job.
Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We'll be